Greetings, Patrick here. 8 questions with. And yesterday, it was a cold, rainy Michigan night. Looking out over here, and it is a cold, clear Michigan night. That's good old Michigan. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes; it'll change. Welcome to the Hump Day edition of 8 Questions with. Tonight's guest will be actress Kerry Goodwin. Will be here with us. Uh, Kerry is a fine actress. We met her. We met her when we did our watch along party for Gunfight at Rio Bravo, in which she is one of the stars of the film. So we decided to have her come back and do a one-on-one, so we could learn about her and her career and her acting, and so she graciously agreed to do that. And so she will be here with us in about 15 minutes or so. Hey, Anthony, how are you, buddy? Um, that's right, man. We're doing it big. April 22nd. That's right. We're doing it April 22nd. We're doing a matinee show. We're gonna do that in the afternoon. Uh, so um, so that's who will be our guest tonight. Tomorrow we have actress Greta Volkova will be with us, and we'll be talking all things uh, uh, fun shark movies, cats, independent filmmaking. Uh, See if Greta has any stories about the infamous Polonia Kia. Um, that will be tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. And yeah, we're gonna end Women Entertainment Month on a very high note. Um, I had a lot of fun last night talking to Sin from Sin's Corner. Um, she is really terrific. Just so much fun to get to know her. Had an excellent talk after the show was over. Her and I ended up just talking away for another hour, and I want to thank you to her husband for letting me do that. And that was a lot of fun, and I cannot wait to have her come back. Um, and we're gonna be doing some stuff. Hopefully, we'll have her back sooner than later. I'm working on something right now that, if it works out, we will have her back soon. Um, all right. Well, we're not done though. I mean, yes, today and tomorrow are our actresses, but we're not done with the month yet, because on Sunday, the 31st, on Easter, we will be watching and discussing Consecration with Jenna Malone and Danny Houston on the ISC show. That's 8 o'clock here on my channel. Uh, yeah, I can't wait to dive into it with the midnight with IFC Midnight Crew. It's a terrific movie. One I just have so much fun with it. Uh, Definitely. Of course, it helps when you have Jenna Malone in anything, because she's really good too, really good. And Danny Houston, of course, was in this movie, and we'll be seeing Danny Houston again real soon, because he'll be the main bad guy in The Crow 2024, which is really good, really good. We got a good bad guy there. I mean, Danny Houston plays a great bad guy, um, but he also plays a pretty good guy too when he's given a chance. Um, so that's what's going to be happening for the in the rest of March. Now, April, we start off April. Um, we're going to start off April on April 2nd, and we're going to have Sean Murray. Composer Sean Murray will be here with us on Tuesday. Oh, before I go any further, I definitely want to give a shout out to our friend Jared Blaney, who very graciously let me promote this tonight's show in his Western TV group. Um, the group is aimed toward 20th century TV series, all the old cowboy movies from the 50s and 60s, and that's really what the primary focus is. Um, but I asked him if I could promote the tonight's show and on his group, and he very graciously said yes. So thank you so much, Jared. I appreciate that so much. All right, so April 2nd, we will see composer Sean Murray will be here, and Sean is actually part of. Uh, he works with Joe Cornette and Alexander Nevsky. He is a fine composer. He's done a ton of movies. It would take me pretty much the rest of the show to tell you who he's had on, who he's made music for movies for. Hey, there he is, and that's who also will be with us next week. In fact, next Wednesday, we will be talking to our good friend Larry, the Horror Cat Dad. He will be our guest on April 3rd at 8 o'clock. And once again, we'll be talking horror movies, and we definitely will be talking cats. That's a guarantee. Um, I, I guarantee that we'll be talking about cats next Wednesday. You know what? I'm already bummed out though, Larry. So that new movie Sting is coming out, right? That new movie Sting coming out about the giant spider and the girl and that's supposed to be her pet and everything, right? So I already know I'm already hating on that movie already. I'm already like, because I'm going like, well, they didn't eat a cat, if they didn't eat a cat, did it? Because that seems to be every single damn spider movie. They always show the spider eating a cat. That's a myth. That is a freaking myth. Cats eat spiders. Spiders don't eat cats. I have seen the cheetah. I've seen him eat at least 6 spiders that I know of. I saw him cut a centipede in half with his paws. He swiped at it and cut it in half. Ain't no way no spider gonna be eating up on the cheetah. That's right. Hey, John, how are you? I'm just ranting. I'm just ranting now about that new movie Sting. It's a cliche. It's like, did they have a dog in the movie? Oh yeah, they have a little Chihuahua in this movie. So how come the Chihuahuas not be eaten up? Right? It's okay for a dog to get eaten up once in a while by a damn spider. Why does it always have to be cats? That's right. Me and Larry, the horror cat dad, we're gonna be tearing it up next Wednesday about that. And then on next Thursday, a week from tonight, we will be here talking with actress and model Chanel Ryan. Small business owner Chanel Ryan will be here with us. And that will be a very, very fun show. Chanel is really a warm hearted person. Um, and stop me if you heard this before, but we'll probably be talking a little bit about cats on that show too, because she has a beautiful cat named King Leo, and and if you see the picture of her on my channel, where you hit the notification button for the show next week, you'll see her with her cat. Okay. Uh, so there you go. And we also have a Friday night show next week too. April the 5th. We will be welcoming my fellow IFC Midnight panelist, Mary Wilson will be here. Mary is she's been a part of the IFC Midnight crew now for a long time. She picks out great movies. She's also a very respected artist. She makes some great art, and she's definitely one of my favorite people. And she'll be here on next Friday, April 5th, and we'll be talking ISC films and other things that cross our path. All right, yeah, John, I think you should go after Dean Norris. You got some pull now, buddy. Whether you know that or not, you got pull. I'm sure if you walked up to him and you asked him, like, hey, would you consider coming on my podcast with you and the big swag? I'm sure he'd do it in a heartbeat. Oh hell, he'd probably come and do it with you and Bernice too. The B. Get the Beatrice, not Bernice. Get Beatrice and or the B. What do you call her, Beatrice, or do you call her the B? Either way, either show that you do, yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. You could jump on that, buddy. Shoot, they know who you are now. All right. So I guess the second Winnie the Pooh movie is now out and running. Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2. And I guess the early reports are saying as bad as the first one was, the second one is much better. Um, God, you would hope so, because the first one is about as bad and as cheesy as you could possibly get. I mean, it was just the worst you could possibly get. I think anything they would have done, anything they would have done would have elevated it from the first one. Um, but I'm hearing that the second one does have it's a much better made movie, has a better writing. It seems like they once they figured out what they were doing, then they seem like okay, now we have an idea what the fans want to see, what we should do. Um, basically we made some money off the first movie. And we see, look, as much as we trashed the first movie, as bad as that first movie was, it still made money, right? It still made money. I mean, they were already announcing the sequel within 3 or 4 days after the first one premiered because they were making money. So the budget's much bigger. I'm sure they're able to hire more skilled people in the various departments. So I'm not entirely surprised that the movie's better. But then again, like I said, anything that you would have done would have been better than the first movie. Uh, yeah, I definitely think so too. Hey, Miami, welcome in, sir. Uh, yeah, the first one. I mean, I guess maybe because they were in such a hurry to do it, to beat everybody else out there to get it out there, which is not necessarily always a good thing to do for a film. Just because you feel like you want to be first out there does not mean you should skip out on production. I mean, the only thing that's going to happen is what happened to your movie. Everybody came out and saw it. Yes, you were the first one there. You were the first one out there to do it, but was it worth it at the basis of the reaction you got? People are going to go watch the second movie, and they're going to be, they're going to be okay, yeah, yeah, but they're not going to watch the first movie because they know that that movie is dog meat. See, John says, yep, yep. So, hopefully, and there you're right. I think the bigger budget will help the movie. Um, a bigger budget doesn't always save a movie because we look at all the big budget movies we watch, and sometimes people with less money do so much more with it, make a much better movie. All right, the doorbell has rang. The doorbell has rang. So let us go get our guest. Let's go talk to actress Kerry Goodwin, and yeah, let's go have some fun. Good evening.
Hey, can you guys
All
hear me?
right, all right. Welcome to Eight Questions with formally.
Thank you.
I know you and Sean uh, it was different for you for me because you've been on the show before I've had you on the interview show. We did the watch party, but that was
Mhm.
before we interviewed. I interviewed you, so I feel sort of backwards a little bit. Like, shouldn't I have talked to her first? Um, but I'm talking to you now, and we'll be talking to Sean next week, and
Awesome.
I'll say hi to Joe because I'm sure he's there. And hi, Joe. Um, and yeah, so much fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
no. How was your day today?
Oh, good. I have the day off, so I spend it with my Mustang.
Oh, cool. What did you guys go out anywhere shopping?
No, so she's in training still. So I'm working on, I want her for film and television, but right now we're working on our reactive skills because she spent her first 3 years in the wild
Yeah.
and she's very sensitive. And so now
Oh,
we're honing down on our skills and working on things.
so what does that entail?
Learning different things. So, one of the things that I have with my trainer is we work on our relationship together. So, my Mustang's name is Mojave. So, Mojave and I work on our relationship together and we work on listening, mainly me, and what she likes, what she dislikes. So, one of the things, for instance, this week we just found out is she can handle loud noises like vehicles and helicopters, but anything very close, like a whip or something that sounds like a gun, she can't handle. And
Right.
it's probably because she's never heard it before and it's very loud to her. And so it's going to be something to where now that we know that this is an issue, it's a step by step with my trainer. What are we going to do? to kind of ease her into it, like, hey, this isn't a bad thing. You're in a controlled environment. You don't have to flee. You're safe. One of the things we talked about was it was a whip experience, which is how we realized she was reactive. We might get her earplugs just so that she doesn't hear it as much, and then slowly realize, hey, this isn't a problem. Put her near an. She's very reactive with other horses, so if she sees another horse not reacting as much, she seems to calm down. So we tend to do different things like that. You just
I
learn
I never really realized how much work it does go into, because you see horses on westerns and they're riding, and there's the hero riding down hell, hell bet for leather and everything else. You just assume that, you put the saddle on and jump on in there and it's like action, and you do that. Um, but it takes a long time to break a horse into becoming basically a good actor.
Yeah, you want a quiet mind. So they want they usually want somebody that handles loud noises. For the most part, if you're ever on a Western set, there's always a safety meeting. I mean, in general, about, be careful with props and things like that. Same goes for horses.
Sure.
Um, but horses are the same way, where there's a lot of times when it's their first time on set, there's so much stuff going on that there's a lot, and if they've been on set multiple times, they start getting used to, we don't need to pay attention what's over there. Oh, what's going on the left is okay. And then they they'll kind of zone out because, oh, we're just going to stand here, we're okay. So when you look on a lot of stuff like television now, if it shoots in, like, for instance, Los Angeles, they use a lot of the same horses and a lot of the same animals. And you'll start recognizing, like, hey, that horse is used all the time. Tag the Bear is notorious on a lot of stuff. He's the bear they use, on everything, and he lives down here. And because of that, it's harder. It's just over time. My previous horse, Piglet, was used on set. Nothing bothered her. And you get into weird creative spaces. Like sometimes you're hiding in a trough and you're holding them. And then at that point, you're just trying to hide, but they're so interested in what you're doing in a trough because you don't really do that on a normal day. So, I've been a rock on set holding a horse in the background,
Did, did,
trying to hide.
did, did you say your other horse was named Piglet?
Yeah.
No, if you can see the chat, if you can watch the chat, if you look over there, you'll see that we were talking about Winnie the Pooh.
Okay.
So, we're talking about Winnie the Pooh, the whore Winnie the Pooh. And yeah, I didn't even think about that. I wonder how they made. I'm sure they'll tell me now. I'm just thinking to myself, going like, whenever I think of Winnie the Pooh, I think of I think of Eeyore, the donkey, and Tigger, and then Piglet. But how? Okay, so how did you give your horse a name of Piglet?
So I didn't name Piglet. Piglet was a rescue horse that was going to slaughter in Texas. And my previous trainers were on a ranch at the time where the ranch was going to be turned into a dude ranch, kind of. And they basically rescued 6 horses at the time. And Piglet was one of them. And they didn't have papers. I think they had papers on one of them. And so they come across from Texas, and then because they didn't know any history of these horses, they spent a few days trying to figure out names. And Pig she likes to eat all the time. She came very fat. So of everyone who was starving, she was one of the fatter ones. And so after a few days, they were like, you're a Piglet. And so Piglet stuck. So
you know what? It's funny you mentioned that too. And to me, it just blows my mind, especially where it's at. It blows my mind, considering the so-called history of the state and whatnot. But it does blow my mind when I hear that there are horse slaughtering plants. Not so much that there are horse slaughtering plants, but they're in Texas, because Texas has such a. I mean, the horse was one of the most important components in making Texas into a state. You know,
Wow.
it truly was. Could or even the whole United States. Like the West was won. It wasn't won by necessarily man. It was definitely won by the horse.
Yeah.
Whoever had the best horses, and Texas being what it is, and you hear that, it sort of just surprises me, uh, to know that they actually have plants like that in Texas.
I don't know if the slaughtering actually happens in the United States, but the idea is the kill pen shelters. I don't know if they all go to Texas or if that's just one of the main areas, but as a hub. But a lot of people I've learned that if you don't, I don't know, if you can't afford a horse or there's something wrong or you don't know what to do, you kind of just send it to like a kill shelter. And they do one of two things. They'll send it to auction, hoping that they'll get money for it and they'll take it off somebody else's hands. Or the ones that are good enough for meat, they sell it to Mexico or Canada. And so that's where Piglet was on the last issue of that, to where she was at the kill pen and then rounded up with the other five friends.
Yeah, it's just yeah, that I have to admit that it bothers me a great deal thinking about that, because horses are just so damn intelligent. You
And you
know, they're
never,
they're
you,
aware.
you never know too. Like Piglet, by the time I got her, I know when she showed up, they said she had a lot of temperamental issues, but you never really know the story. Like some of them, it's because, maybe the owner couldn't afford them or owner passed away and nobody knew what to do. Some of them was like health issues. Um, I mean, Piglet, we found out, was really well trained. When I got her, I wanted to learn how to jump. We found out she was a jumping horse, and that's
Uh,
what she liked to do. So it was one of these things where, like, on that journey with her, we were just finding out all these extra stuff. It was like, oh, here's, kind of figuring out Piglet's story with what we knew. Um, so it was really interesting. And I on Facebook there are pages where I see like kind of what happens with the kill shelter horses. It's really sad. And I mean most people really try to get them into sanctuaries or do something. Because I have Mojave, she's a BLM Mustang. Technically it's illegal for them to go into kill pens, because they're a federally owned animal, but they still make their way in there. So it's interesting to see how what happens with everything.
and a lot of people probably don't know that there's still wild horses out. Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada. There's still wild horses out there.
Mhm.
You see people, drive. They'll be kayaking down the rivers, and you'll see groups of horses drinking and socializing together,
Oh yeah.
and and they're wild, and people just don't realize that. They go like, well, whose horses are these? They're nobody's. They're out there. They're wild animals.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but they're on federally protected land, so people cannot take them or hurt them.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you don't want to do
Some
that.
I some I think depending on where their HMAs are, they're closer to human populations. Mojave's from an Air Force base, so she's very reactive because she had no contact with humans at all until she was rounded up.
Oh, right.
So
How now you think this Mojave is how old is she? About 3 years old?
she was 3 years old when she was rounded up. So I
Okay.
have all of her information from the government. So I know everything about her history and everything. So it's easy to figure out where she was and how she got moved around and all that.
Now, was she trained enough for you to use during the Rio Bravo shoots? I mean,
I
did
did
you?
not. I didn't own her then. I owned Piglet. So
Okay.
Piglet was. Piglet wasn't used for Rio Bravo because we were shooting in Arizona and Piglet stayed in California. In fact, during Taken, Piglet was on set on another location shooting, and I was in Arizona shooting at the same time. So Piglet was doing set stuff. I wasn't. Mojave, I hadn't owned yet. Mojave was rounded up in 2018 and then sat in Ridgecrest for 2 years and then was bought by her first owner in 2021. And so she's very late to the game for a Mustang. So we're taking a little
But
long
she's
time.
still pretty. I mean, an average horse can live what 20 years or so.
About 30 now, 30 to 40,
Wow.
depending on their breed and depending on their life. Most Piglet was 20 when I had her. Mojave's 9 now. Most Mustangs, if they're in the wild, they don't live very long. Like Mojave would be considered old now. Mustangs usually live till around 30-ish now. Horses, like humans, are now living longer, um, just because of supplements and veterinary care.
Right.
Breeding deals with it. Thoroughbreds are so interbred now that they're kind of weeding themselves out in a sense. It just really depends.
Now, have you now you all your horses that you've ever owned in your life? Um, I mean, how old were you when you first got your first horse?
I was 15. I bought a thoroughbred. So I
Okay.
had a descendant of native dancer. And so he raced in Santa Anita here, which I found
Now,
out.
did having horses help you? You know, was that one of the deciding factors in that you wanted to become an actress? I mean, like, did you grow up watching westerns and seeing the horses on screen and considered, I want to act, but I want to do western movies. I want to be, I want to ride a horse.
So
Did that play a role?
I grew up with animals. I grew up on a dairy farm in Central California, and I grew up in 4-H. So I've always had animals in my life. The acting came from my father. He was in community theater when I was a kid, and so that kind of was the big acting draw right there. And then going into theater in high school was a big thing. Adding animals back into it is kind of a newer pandemic thing, just because the pandemic quieted everything down, and then I felt like we might need to change it up a little bit. Why
Um,
not do something new?
so you,
I
so
had
you
already
did.
been, we had shot Promise already, and Joe had asked me, because I don't know, there's not a lot happening in the pandemic in LA at the time, and if I wanted to take writing lessons. And I was like, sure, like that seems good because we had already talked about Rio Bravo. They're kind of getting ready to pre-production with that. I kind of had been doing like that Western. I have a past of doing a few other Westerns. I do a lot of period pieces. So it was like, oh, this might be a good thing to like get back into. And so that kind of started that back up again. And then now it's trying to figure out how to mold the two. And so Piglet was nice because she was also already trained for set and could do that. Mojave, I just made it a challenge because it's like, oh, let's do something new and make it more difficult. Why not?
Now, did you give Mojave her name, or did she already have it?
So Mojave already had her name from, that's her original name that her first owner gave her. I'm her third. It is bad luck to rename a horse.
Okay.
And so going through Facebook, I found her like original post from when her original owner posted her on Facebook. I just dropped the second part of it because I didn't like it. But she's registered with Mojave now, so her name's Mojave. She knows her name. I mean, I can scream it down the street and she'll hear me and come
Right,
walking.
right. I've seen that. I've seen that. And donkeys can do the same thing. A donkey will respond to his name too.
Yeah. I don't
Th-
know. She's she's very smart. She knows her name. She knows when the car is parked. She knows when I'm walking. She knows when I'm taking too long when I'm walking. She's pretty good.
Yeah, horses are incredibly intelligent. I mean, they know a lot of words.
Hmm.
A lot of words. I mean, I mean, they're just as responsive to verbal communication as any dog or cat. Um, I just say probably dog. Cat won't respond to you anyway because that's just cats.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Let's see. Our friend Larry mentions if not for the pandemic, he would not have become a cat dad.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, I had to have a cat. I had to get which is funny because my cat's name is Paladin after the show How Gun Will Travel. So
I
that's
have
fine.
I have Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim, so
Well, that,
I get
is
it.
that he needs a cat, Ramona Flowers.
Yeah,
That's so awesome. So awesome. That's a great name.
yeah,
That's a great name for a cat.
and she knows it.
Yeah, and you know, because that's actually, I'm actually surprised I've not heard that before. Because I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about the movie, and it's like, yeah, she pretty much was pretty cat-like in that movie. I mean, she's just like, whatever, dude.
Uh,
That's fun.
my cat has
Um,
that personality, so it makes sense. She would have 7 evil ex-boyfriends. I believe it.
yeah. Now is Ramona Orange by chance?
She's not. She's a Russian blue.
Those are smart too. Those are
She's very smart.
very smart. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I've known people with Russian blues, and they can communicate with them. They can call them in or whatever. They're incredibly smart. So you've actually been since you grew up on a ranch, so you're very at home with the animals.
Yes, I've always had animals. I grew up with rabbits, goats. Always had cats, dogs in my life. It's weird when I didn't through college. So even now, it's like, oh yeah, I have
Now,
animals.
do you think owning animals and being around them as much as you were, do you think that reflects, will we see that reflected in your acting around animals or just your acting in general? Because, you know, when you come across on screen, at least in Rio Bravo, your 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 character is really gentle and real peaceful. I mean, you know, she's not, you know, harsh or loud or and I had a feeling that what we were actually seeing wasn't so much a character so much as it was you know, like
Hmm.
that's who Kerry Goodwin is right there. That's exactly the type of person she is. She's willing to help out anybody. Do
Yeah,
you think that do you think some of the upbringing does reflect in your acting?
I think it does. I mean, if I play a character that's opposite than me, I think it still bleeds in there a little bit. It just naturally does. You can't cut it off. I mean, if I see an animal, and Joe could tell you this, if you want to find me on set, it's you. I'm usually not in my trailer. I'm sitting by the horses
Hmm.
usually, and hanging out with them by the animals.
Yeah.
Um, that's usually how it works. I know Kay is the horse that I rode in Rio Bravo, and I'd never ridden her before, so it's always one of my things to introduce myself to the horse I'm going to ride, even if it's briefly for 2 seconds. Like, okay, what are we doing? We're going here to here. Okay, cool. Well, let me hang out with her for like 5 minutes so she knows I'm going to jump up in a dress, you
Right.
know, and
Now,
carry things because
do
it's
you
not normal.
do you do two things? Do you handle? Are you both a wrangler and a an actress on set based on your experience and your skill set, or is that totally separate? I mean, or would you, or do you just want to be an actress first and let somebody else do the wrangling?
Um, Actress first. I'm interested in wrangling, so I did. I've wrangled a little bit on set. I did a little bit last year and the year before. I assisted, and I had so much fun because it was so different. Like everyone's worried about being on set, and I'm like, nope. Um, but I did do some scary stuff. Like we went, Piglet died, and she needed to be on set because Piglet was supposed to be there, and so her replacement was a really pretty gray Mustang, and it was her first time on set. And the one thing I didn't want was to be on the brand new pony that nobody knew has is 4 years old and has never done this before, but nobody knew. And that was great. Um, Piglet's movie needed to be reshot, and so we had to paint a horse to look exactly like Piglet, and then I ended up writing. Um, so it was surreal that the movie that Piglet was supposed to be in, I still ended up writing Piglet basically and doing stuff.
I take it that I take it what happened to Piglet was completely unexpected.
It was she was in a pasture accident and there's nothing we could do. It,
Mm.
and
Hole in the ground. She stepped in a hole in the ground.
no, she got kicked by her best friend and broke 3 ribs.
Oh,
And
oh.
yeah,
Horses
and
can't.
she
I guess.
was there a week.
Okay. Wow,
So when you get
horses
the
are
ribs,
they're amazing animals. There are amazing animals, but wow, it's like when something like that does happen, like a broken leg or a broken rib. I mean, before if a dog breaks a rib or a cat breaks a leg, I mean, you can put a splint on it. Hell, sometimes you could even amputate it, if need be, and then the animal recovers. But with a horse, they're so fragile in that sense that something like that happens, and it's just like that's horrible. That's
yeah, she had 2 break and then one clean broke, and the one that clean broke popped her lung, and
that was it.
that's when the choice was had to be made because I couldn't deal with the pain. I was with her like
Um,
the entire week.
yeah. But you know what? I mean, that must have been really traumatic. But you know what? You honored your bond with her, and you said that if it comes down to that, I will take care of you. Um, that's just something I see a lot of people with animals. They love their animals, but they love them too much. Sometimes they have trouble with the honor part. Like if they get really sick or they get really critically hurt, you have to help them. They can't speak for themselves. That's why you're there.
Absolutely.
That must have been one of the most difficult things in your entire life, I'm sure.
It was a choice I didn't make until the last night. It was like I think I have to make it right now. I always told Piglet when we trail rode a lot and we did a lot of really crazy things, probably unsafe crazy things, and I always call her my ride or die. And so it was always one of those things like we're gonna do it, but if we go down, we're going down together. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like we're in it together. And so I mean that was one of the things when I took her over and I was like, well, you got me to the end. Like, doesn't matter what we do, we got it. And it was whether we're riding, whatever health problems, whatever it is, like, I'll be right there. And stuck with it. But I do
Uh,
that for all my animals. I do that for my friends, it's just like, all right, we're family.
right. And then you had to finish the film
Hmm.
with another horse painted like your piglet. Um, that must have been really, really tough. How long did it take you to compose yourself before you're ready to shoot the scene?
We did a test paint the day before to make sure the paint would, because it was non toxic paint. It was SAG, so we were making sure everything was good. And then we had to compare photos of Piglet because this horse is also taller than Piglet. And then I had never ridden him before, so and he rides very different than Piglet too. So then, we have all this different stuff. And I think really what did it for everybody who was on set that knew what happened to her is when there was no issue until I got on him because it was a he and Piglet's a she. But when I got him and we were in between set scenes and then we were cantering because we were shooting in the forest and then we were cantering and taking off because when there's photos of us and like video, it's like, we're going out and having a trail ride and doing dumb stuff, except I'm on a reining horse and
Mm,
not on my jumper.
right. Wow, that's now what movie was that for? Was that for Promise?
That wasn't for Promise. I actually totally forgot what it's called, um, but it is not out yet. Um,
Okay.
Mendocino, I think maybe is what it's called. They're still shooting. They're missing a few days from it, and then it will hopefully come out. And it's like a time traveling western.
Oh, how
It's
fun is that?
Yeah. So was
Um,
it, I've seen pieces of it. I got to see what they shot of Piglet and everything. So I got to see that when I was one of the days that we were shooting.
it's fun. It's really fun. Interesting is that you know, you it's as far as moviegoers go, you of all the genres that are currently being shot or made and aired and everything else. Now you have 1923, and you have maybe as far as the old west goes, you have 1923 coming up, and you had there's a few other there. I mean, I guess he's trying to keep the keep the western alive. I saw I've seen Yellowstone. It's a modern western.
Hmm.
I think I'm not really I'm not really sure how I look at that series. I'm not sure if I'm looking at it like I absolutely love Cole Hauser. I mean, the guy who plays Rip. I mean, he's phenomenal. He steals that whole show for me. I'm just not exactly sure if I'm watching that show like I did House. Did you ever watch that show House?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I think Yellowstone is more of just like a drama, like a Western soap opera drama in a sense.
Yeah, because see, I watched House, and a lot of people, the whole House is amazing. I sat there and I watched it, and I'm like, okay, this is it's like I've been around a lot of hospitals, and I've come there and I'm sitting there watching House, and I'm watching it, and I'm going like, okay, there's just no freaking way none of what I'm watching would ever take place in a legitimate hospital.
Yeah.
That guy would be out on his ass before the first commercial. Um, and then I started watching it, and then it sort of became sort of humorous, like dark comedy, dark humor. And I don't necessarily think maybe that's how I looked at it. Um, as far as that goes, I looked at Yellowstone, and I'm seeing all that all the drama. It's like a sort of like a Dallas on steroids, so to speak. Um,
Yeah.
but what's important is that there are westerns still being made. I mean, and you tell people that like yes, there are westerns still out there. There's still, there are people who love the genre. There's people who love the period, like you said, the period. You like acting in period pieces. There's so many out there, but a lot of them are just so far underneath the radar. It's hard to get, like I mentioned the Rio Bravo franchise. People have heard of it. Um, I mentioned the Virginian with Trace Atkins. Everybody's like, what? I mean, like from the TV show, The Virginian? Well, sort of, in the name only. I never heard of it. I never, it seems like the Western wants to come back,
Hmm.
but it just seems like it's such a crowded playing field now. It's so hard to get out there unless you got people like super fans like myself and some others out there who are out there, but like, hey,
Yeah.
westerns are out there. I'd rather sit there and watch. I'd rather sit there and watch a gunfight at Rio Bravo than again some action movie with fake fire and all that other stuff. I'd rather watch something really like I can sink my teeth into. Um, when did you get into the western? What's your history to it? Was your dad a big western fan? Did you grow up watching westerns? How did you get involved in making these movies?
Oh, there we go. Are there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear?
It's like
Okay.
everything got feeling quiet. Yes.
Oh yeah, it's StreamYard. If we don't have a hiccup if we don't have a hiccup during the stream, it's something's wrong. Um. Oh yeah, Larry's mentioning too. Time travel western. It sounds very interesting. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. We were just talking about that too, Larry. Me and Echo were talking about that. There was a series called Outlaws, and it had a premise like
Mhm.
that where a marshal were going to catch four bad guys, and then they got caught, and they all got warped into today's world. And they had it didn't last very long. It didn't last very long. I think today would be perfectly. I think it'd be perfectly at home. I think it'll be.
Mhm.
I think your movie. I think your movie will do very well. People want to see that kind of action and adventure.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think now is a good time for kind of different stuff, and
mhm,
people are kind of over the same things that have been happening over the last like 10 years.
yes, I so agree with that. Um, so what the question I asked before we got cut off was what was like some of your favorite westerns growing up? Your favorite movies growing up? I mean, were you always a western fan, or dramas, comedies? What did you like when you what did you watch as you grew up?
I'm more of a drama person. Um, I'm a huge history buff. So one of the things when I was in university, I studied a lot in all the different genres. So there's the older like Western films that I like with different things. Like I love Stagecoach. I think that's probably my favorite. But in general, like drama was more of what I like to watch. I like more. I'm not a huge sci-fi person, but I like the elements. So like Christopher Nolan is more like I love Christopher Nolan stuff. So I kind of have grown up with stuff since he's come on the scene, like with things. My parents are were very big into sci-fi, so I watched tons of sci-fi when I was a kid. They were all
Okay.
about Mystery Science Theater. So I grew up watching a lot of things like that and a lot of bad movies.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of weird different ones too. Like my brother and I will talk about taking trips and seeing certain movies and just remembering pieces of them and then actually trying to find them, even though we're like, hey, we were here and we watched this really weird movie and now we need
Oh,
to go find it and see what it actually looks like from the perspective of an adult.
so
And
you like
like,
going on location? You like going on locations to movies?
well, there's that. And we did a lot of traveling as a family. You know, my parents wanted us to like see the US. And so we did a lot of trips. And so there would be times we'd be in the hotel and they'd put like, you know, whatever was on TMC or if it, you know, the movie channel was on or whatever. And so I remember certain older movies, pieces of it that we'd watch. And then we try to go back and watch them now and then talk about was it as good as we saw those elements back then and how that's worked for us now? Because like I act and he's a composer. And so then we really work on how all of everything that we've learned from our past and how we utilize it now in our life and like what's that
Right.
done. Like I have this big thing that for whatever reason comedies there were a lot of comedies that scared me as a kid. So I go back and
Oh,
watch them
okay.
and then watch them as an adult. And some of them I'm like, okay, I don't know why this scared me. But then there are other ones where I'm like, okay, this actually bothers me now as an adult. So I could see why it bothered me as a kid. Like it's just weird and out there. And then why'd my parents let me watch that? Like, okay, I get it.
Okay, I'm curious. What are some of the movies, comedies that you watched younger, and then you watch them older, and you go like, yeah, that's sort of creepy.
The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. I think
Oh,
notoriously, if you ask anybody I know, that's the movie I'll be like, have you watched that movie? And have you ever had nightmares about harpies? Because I have when they come
right.
and want to take you. And I'll never forget watching that as a kid. I want to say it was like 93 and like rewatched it probably about 13 years ago and then still was like, okay, kind of still feel the
Yeah,
same way. And then had
yeah.
my brother rewatch it and he was like, oh, it's actually pretty good. And I was like, no, like I will wait another 10 years and we'll rewatch it again and then we'll see how I feel.
Right, right. Yeah, that's interesting because for me, I think the one, and I'm thinking about this, thinking the one comedy that when I watched it, it would sort of creep me out a little bit because it was, but it was Pee Wee's Great Adventure with
Okay.
Large Marge. I remember when I
Okay.
watched
Yeah.
that, everybody, they all deny it now, but I'll tell you, when that came on there, the whole theater jumped. That scene where she absolutely, everybody
Yeah.
actually absolutely jumped at that. That is still a creepy scene today. It still is. So I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. Hi, Betty. How are you? Glad you're here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's so much fun. That's good comedy. Good comedies are, we're talking about that too. I talked about that with somebody. We're talking about where the comedies come back. Where they come back. It's just like any other genre. It's like it just seems to be over and over. Like we're being pushed. Our genre watching is being just squeezed down. Like this is the only thing we can watch: horror movies, action movies, and horror action movies. It's like, well,
Absolutely.
what happened to the dramas? What happened to the cowboys? What happened to period pieces? What happened to we don't really get to see those too much, especially from the big studios. Now it's up to
They don't
it's up
want
to
to, I think some elements, I think that part of it is they don't allow people to be creative and they shoot that down. And I think part of it is like horror film is technically cheaper to make. Horror and children's films are the two cheapest you can make. And so a lot of time that's what they want to make because that's the quickest turnaround, regardless of anything. It could be terrible, but in some way they will make a better return off of that. They make it cheap, flip around, boom. Um, but I agree with you. I haven't seen a good comedy in years. And the few times that somebody has said something's really good, it really hasn't been that great. It's been a good try, but you're seeing this is where I think you start seeing the entertainment industry in Hollywood just, they're not allowing the creatives that want to be creative to be like, hey, I got this great fun idea. And they're like, hey, we're going to do, you know, Marvel, Captain Marvel 3, you know,
yeah. I
and it's,
feel I will feel this way. I do feel this way. I do feel that some people are revolting against that more
yeah,
than ever before. More
yeah,
than ever before. Before it would sit there, people would just take it. But now, it's funny. Is Hollywood has actually done this to themselves. Is that the playing field is now open so wide. Before you could control it. Like I mentioned before, the big studios. This is what we're this. These are the three genres that we're releasing, and and they can sit there and get away with that because they controlled all the theaters. But now
hmm
that they've done the streaming, now people are sitting at home going like, I don't need to go to the theater now to watch a movie I really don't want to see. I don't want to feel ever like I don't want to ever feel like I have to go see a movie, and the movie I'm watching, the reason I'm there is because it's the only thing it's there. It's the only thing at the theater is what I'm going to watch.
yeah,
Because you're right, there's no choice there. I'd rather stay home. I'll stay home in and order a pizza in and then sit there and watch something that I want to watch.
yeah,
And there's so many options out there. Um, and there is room, and I think the studios are trying to fight back a little bit with that though by eliminating physical media. That's the thing. I think that really hurts. I think losing physical media hurts the independent filmmaker more than it does the studios
yes. I
because
mean,
because I think that for an independent company, that's how they make their money back based on what they can sell their movies. They can sell their movie out to people, and people go and buy it and take it home and watch it. And you tell two friends, they tell two friends and what have you. But I think with the loss of physical media as we know it, I think it hurts the independent filmmaker more than anything else right now.
oh yeah. I mean, we saw it in LA with just the strike where, I mean, you could do independent films. So you had people while you weren't working, hey, let's just go shoot independent stuff. And you saw more creative ideas, not going against like crossing any lines or anything, but if you're non-union and stuff like that, like, hey, we can work with our production companies and do this. Whereas the studios, depending on what studio you are, you're not worried about your financing because you have like a theme park or you have something by other means. You're not worried because you know you have something else coming in. You control
Yes,
everything. You're getting income from so much other, and you have so much say. I think that was the big thing. I mean, Barbie did so well and Oppenheimer did so well this past summer. And it's the first time they've seen big stuff in the box office. But I have so many friends now that they don't go to movies ever.
No.
They don't, it's so expensive to go. They know that to support the theater, you have to pay for concessions, and that's expensive.
No.
And they would rather just, there's better stuff that you can find streaming on the different streaming platforms, that it's either what's already out in theaters or you're going to find something that is better, more creative, and more fulfilling when you watch it.
Yeah, it's funny. I keep saying to myself, I'm gonna go out there and actually watch a movie. Actually gonna get up there and watch a movie. And I keep on saying that with the best of intentions, but when it comes down to it, I don't ever go. I don't ever go. I'm like, I could just see it here. I can see it here. I can order it from streaming or what have you, and I don't have to leave the comfort of my house. And then you're right and then if you do want to go to the theater, say, okay, I'm going to go see a movie. I was stunned. I thought someone was actually pulling my leg the first time someone says, "Yeah, you pay $15 a ticket." And last time I went to the movies, the ticket was $6.50. I went to
Yeah,
a matinee. I went to a matinee and watched It Part Two. And it was $6.50. And now they're saying, "Oh no, a ticket will cost 15 to 18, $20 a
yeah,
ticket for a movie."
yeah, yeah.
It's just like, and that's not even concessions. It used to
Yeah.
be like $20 all in, pop
Hmm.
soda, a popcorn, soda, and a ticket. You'd be in there for 18, $20,
Yeah.
and now it's like, oh, it's just, yeah, it's why do you think people? I mean, why movies for you, Carrie? I mean, you could have been you could have been doing horse shows. You could have been a
Right.
jumper. You could have been, it could have been a working farm. I mean, you could have kept going out for your parents. What got you into acting? I mean, I know you mentioned your dad earlier,
Hmm.
but did you have anything else at all? Were you a creative? Were you a writer? Did you like to read? Uh, did you always see yourself as a creative person
I
growing up?
am. I'm an avid reader. Sorry, there's some weird calls happening. I'm an avid reader, so I always have something to read. Um, I was reading. I'm huge into horse racing, so as a kid, I was always reading books about different race horses and murder mysteries with racehorses and things like that. Um, and told my parents when I went into high school, I knew where I was going to move. I knew what university I wanted to go to, and I knew what I was going to study by the time I would graduate. And I know my mom didn't believe me, but my dad was like, okay. And by the time I graduated from high school, I was moving to Chicago. I was going to DePaul, and I'm doing theater. I chose to get a BA in theater and not a BFA because I believed as an actor, the best thing is to have world experience. And BFA, you just focus on kind of the craft of acting, whereas you need that. But I also feel like kind of have to have world experience to be an actor,
Right.
or it makes it a little more difficult. And I'm just passionate about being on set. And so one of the things when I graduated is I didn't want anything to do with film. I wanted to do theater,
Mm.
and I was debating whether to do something like Second City or Shakespeare. I'm very into Shakespeare. Um, so that was kind of where I was at in that world. And then I transferred to Marquette University my sophomore year and decided on a film major. I worked at a movie theater for 10 years.
Oh
So I
wow.
knew a lot about film, a lot of building prints and doing things like that. And it was one of my teachers when we were kind of going through getting ready to do, I think it was going in my junior year, when she was like, what do you want to do for acting? And I was like, be in Chicago. I want to be a Chicago actor. And she was like, I think you should look into film. And I'm like, why? Why would I do that? And she was like, because you're so subtle as an actress. And she was like, there's so much stuff you do that the first two rows see. And she goes, but nobody in the back row is ever going to see it. And she goes, and back then, Marquette had a film class, but she didn't offer it the entire time I went there. So I had a very weird experience. But so I kind of thought about that, talked it over with a few friends, and was like, I don't know. I've never been on camera. And so she even had me look into film schools because she was like, what are you going to do after you graduate? And I was like, well, get my master's, I think, figure it out. I don't know, continue learning because I think as an actor, you're always a student. You should always continue learning in some kind of way. And so I started looking at film schools just for fun, randomly, and then I submitted to one and I got in. And they were like, "We'll take you immediately," and I was like, "I have to graduate from college first." And it was in Canada, and so I was like, "I also need approval to move to Canada and to get all that stuff done." And so that kind of turned around and was like, "Oh, I guess I'm gonna focus on film." I've done some theater since then, and I love theater, and I love it when I've worked on films where they kind of start from beginning to end, like live TV shows run like a theater production. And for me, that's amazing because it's just like being doing live theater just in pieces, and I love it. Other people kind of have a hard time with it, but to me, it's great. And then when I went to Vancouver Film School, that's where I was like, oh, we're gonna do film now and change it up a little bit.
I
And
think that I think making film to me is like really gets me is like how it's all chopped up, you know. Like you'll hear someone talk about making a movie, and then you see this pivotal scene, right? And it's like a key scene in the third act. I'm gonna get the bad guy or whatever, and you find out that was our first day of shooting. Remember? And it's like, wait a minute, that part was your very first day. Oh yeah, that was the first day of shooting. And it's like, but it happens like 90 minutes into the movie.
mhm,
It's like how do you get to that place? Okay, you're going to be coming in here and rescuing rescuing the kids here. So and then that's your first day, and you gotta ramp it up to be that person that day. And whereas if you're doing it by, like you said, live theater or TV show, it's a storyboard. Here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end, and you know where you're going to be at. Uh,
mhm.
is it disconcerting to shoot a movie like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna shoot your big scene on the third day of shooting. You're gonna be there for 50 days, but on the third day, there you are. You're at the most pivotal scene of the entire movie, and you're already being asked to shoot it. Is that disconcerting for an actor? And
I
how do you yourself react to rising to that level?
I do. So I print everything. I'm very old school. I print everything out and I put it in a notebook, and then I take notes, and then I talk to the director about what. Well, we start from beginning to end, and I always ask, and Joe will tell you, whatever many copies of drafts we have, I always want the final that I can print out, and then we will go into the elements of the script. And when it comes down to like big scenes like that, because usually I won't know. For instance, when we shot like at Rio Bravo, I had no idea about what we were shooting until I showed up. Like I knew I wasn't going to be the first scene, but I was shooting the first day. So I was prepared, like with my notes, like the buildup of how everything's going. With this, I knew because how the cast was coming in, I had an idea of what we were probably going to shoot first, just because I kind of had knowledge of it. But a heads up is good usually. I mean, it's nice. I don't think you get it. You're blessed to get it all the time on set. And then the day that I showed up and did my fittings and everything when I got to Arizona was when they were like, here's the shooting days. This is what we're doing. And then at that point in time, I like to come in. I always like to fly in early to go through all my notes
Right.
because now there's how I've read it, and now there's how we need to go back and be like, okay, we're shooting the end first. okay, well, where is this character's life been, and what do I need to forget when we get there, you know, or how we're doing this, and then we're doing that, and then that's when I tend to have to play with that. I have not had the chance in any film where I've been critically injured, where it's not shot first, and then there's been other days. Most of the time, they have a lack of multiple wardrobes, so they're like, if we shoot you, we're only shooting you like twice because you can't. We have no more clothes, and I'm like, okay. So I know that if it's a
Yeah.
big scene like that, I've been really lucky that I'm like, oh well, that's how we're going. Um, so I'm usually so far I've been prepped with that when it comes down to it. Bigger, yeah. I mean, that's usually what I do, and then it's just I'm a person that I have to blueprint everything out because I'm in my head, and so that's one of the things I blueprint it out and then I forget it. As one of the things I have learned as an actor,
It must
and
be
so
it
you
must
see
be sort
notes,
of a
and you see gone.
is it safe to say the bane of your acting, of your performing, would be when someone comes up there and says, "Oh, we're doing a rewrite." Is that one of those things where you're sitting there and you are like, well, "Wait a minute, what do you mean by rewrite?" I mean, and because that to me that's, I think that's just got to be like the most. And from what I've heard from other actors too, it's like that, hey, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna shoot some of the script. You already have it where you're gonna be. The next day you come out there and you're expecting to ride the horse down into the canyon, and give some dialogue. And next thing you know, they're telling you, well, no, we're gonna have you ride up over here, and then you're going to stand there while the hero comes in there and attempts to rescue you, and you tell him to leave you alone because you already taken care of yourself. Sort of that sort of thing. That's, you know, is that frustrating for you? Do you like that? I mean, is this
I
something
can,
that an actor has a right to complain about with rewrites?
yeah, I think it depends on the production and where you're at in it. When it comes down to lines, and everyone I think has a different opinion on it. If you're working on something that is like union, you memorize to the T with lines, unless the writer is also the producer and is also the director, because the word of thumb is if you change the script, like if you're an actor that just likes to ad lib, you're doing a disservice to the writer and taking away from their work that they rightfully wrote and that they got
I
paid
agree with
for.
that. I
And
agree.
so one of the things is to like work hard and there are lines like there's always one line in every script that I never remember. And like I'll always like I know in Rio Bravo there was one and it was like, Joe, I'm never going to remember this line. And for whatever reason it's like always off and something, and then it'll be changed, to make it sound right because it just sounds like a reading it off the paper. But I prefer, if it's dialogue, prefer to stick with the script. But if it's something like a come on set and it's like, okay, you're gonna be riding a horse, you're gonna do this. But if they switch it up and they're like, okay, now you're gonna kill, you're gonna fight the guy instead, and I'm like, okay, cool, we can do this. That doesn't bother me. The more in advance I know, the easier it is for me to be like, okay, cool, now I can like adjust because the whole point is the wordage is in my body and not just coming out of my mouth.
Right.
If I'm blessed with it, sometimes you're not because sometimes the script is changed literally an hour before, and so you're just like, okay, is that what you want right now? Okay, cool. Um, but I prefer it to be as close as possible, and then we can play on set because it'll usually change. Like Rio Bravo, it changed. Some of it was the elements of just what was happening, or it was like, hey, this seems written this way, but like in real life, this is not how this is going to work out for everybody, you know?
Right.
And, but at that point, you're with stunts, your stunt coordinator, your director's there, you have you're working with two other actors that are all like, oh, yeah, no, we're all in agreement. This is how we're going to go. And it's like, okay,
Right.
cool.
Um,
Yeah.
I guess one of the questions I've been holding off, I'll ask it anyway. But how did you and Joe end up meeting each other?
So I, in November of 2018, started bartending in Toluca Lake at this place called the Red Door. And he had come in, like he had come in a few times, and I was working in the back. It's like this little speakeasy bar that was there at the time. And he'd come in a few times and I'm just like, get a martini or get a glass of wine and then leave. And he had overheard me talk to another guest that was interested in auditioning me for his horror film at Paramount. And we were talking about scripts and some like what he was doing and how he wanted to creatively do it. And then Joe was like, "You act?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." Just because my day job, I usually don't mention anything. Like, Mojave, or what I'm interested in, but you usually don't hear anything about acting. And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he's like, "Oh, well, I have this role that I can't cast. Like, we've tried casting it, but I haven't found the right actress. You know, do you have a reel? Do you have a resume?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, like, I can send it to you. I have everything." And that's how it started.
And I guess we saw that you could ride too, which is probably pretty damn rare in actuality. Um, yeah, I'm sure that was probably like, oh yeah, this is because that's a skill set not too many actors, period, male or female, have. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
times they'll sit there and I was the person who I really was impressed with the writing was Alexander.
He did.
I mean,
I watched him with some of his writing lessons. So
did the horse ever toss him?
no, no,
I was
no.
gonna say that guy's a big man,
Oh
but
yeah,
he was,
no.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I'm watching him ride, and I'm going like, man, that he looks right at home sitting in that saddle. He looks really good. He looks
He
really good.
no, he
Honestly,
had good lessons. He did really really good. It's
yeah,
if you've never, I think because I grew up around animals, and I mean every animal can be dangerous, but
sure,
I know because I've been bucked off a bunch of times and things like that. But I forget that sometimes people have this absolute fear of like horses are absolutely terrifying. And then getting on them is another element of like, that's even more scary. Like, why would you do that? And it's like, well, why not? And so, I think Alex, because I don't think Alex has ever been on a horse prior to him getting on one. And he rode Joe's horse. Joe, he did lessons on Lady, and
okay,
Lady's a very, very sweet horse. So she's not going to do anything mean or shady. And she'll take time with you and babysit you and make sure you're okay. Because they feel you. They feel if you're nervous.
yeah.
And, and it was just to make sure you're comfortable knowing like, hey, you're okay. You're not going to be, you're not going and doing anything crazy. They'll hire a stunt person to do that. Like, you're good. Like,
Now you mentioned stunts. I take it you did all your stunts in Rio Bravo. You and
yes.
Denise. You guys were both pretty physical in the movie. Did you do all your stunts?
Hmm. I did in the first one and the second one, um, all of them. The third one, all of them.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, good. We know you're coming back the third one. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Uh, I can't wait. I'm so happy. I was talking, like I said, I was talking to a guy who runs a group on Facebook today, and I was promoting the show, and his channel was all about 20th century TV shows. But I pinged him and I said, listen, I says, westerns aren't dead, and I got an interview, with an actress who's doing a western, and then I sent him the interview I did with Joe, and I was holding my breath because it's like all the old cowboy shows. That's the group's what about. But to me,
Yeah.
I always feel like, you know what? It's okay to tell you guys out there there's something new out there. It's okay to love your favorites. No one's telling you, to not to watch them. But you sit there, and a lot of times you hear comments saying, you hear people say, "Man, back in the day, man, back in the old days, back in the old days," and it's just like, and then you want to go out there and say, how do they get to be back in the old days? By being new in that day. So
Yeah,
here we go. We got movies today being made of westerns today. 10 years from now, your kids and their kid and whatnot, they'll be sitting there going like, "Wow, that was really cool." Back in the old days. And yeah, I told Jared, I said, thank you so much for letting me promote it and because it's like I said, the Western is still alive, but getting people out there to know about it, it's a whole different animal. It's a whole different beast. Um, very excited to know that. Very excited to see that Rio Bravo is advancing. I mean, there's so many stories that you can tell,
oh
and
yeah, no, it was great.
you got great cast, you got great chemistry. Like I said, we talked about this. I know that Taken is now out. I didn't know that. Someone told me, yeah, I see us playing in Russia, and I'm like,
Well,
oh, yeah,
Rio
yeah.
Bravo's out. Taken is out on trailers. I think the trailer is out, and then it's being released in July. The last I heard.
It's not playing in Russia right now because that's what it said. Okay,
Yeah, I think
okay.
it's just Rio Bravo. The first one. The first one is, I think, or nobody has told me. I have not
Uh,
heard.
I want to say hello to Van City. Welcome on in. Welcome on in. Thank you, Mr. Bones. You are the man. And hey, Echo, greetings, greetings. I'm glad you guys are here. We're talking to Kerry Goodwin from the Rio Bravo franchise and Promise. And you also did one of your first roles that you did. I was going to ask you about this. One of the first roles you did a background for The Master with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Did.
What was that like? What was that experience like? I mean, it's a big, big movie.
It
What was
was.
it like being on the set of that movie?
That was. Oh, that was such a long time ago. That was 3 days. That was 3 days in Torrance that we shot. It was really hot. And I was one of the Phoenix supporters. It was actually really, really cool. Philip Hoffman was very sweet and very nice.
Yeah,
Um,
miss him.
yes. He was great on set. I was very, very long days. It was like there was a 3:30 a.m. call time, 4 a.m. call time, and then I think a 5:30 a.m. call time. So it was one of the first things I had ever done where I was getting up extremely early in the morning and getting home extremely late. But it was great fun. We did dance scenes. We did, I mean, it was all period. So it was makeup, hair. Most of the time was makeup and hair and getting everything done. Amy Adams is really sweet when we were on set. Joaquin Phoenix was there the third day. And everybody was really nice. And it was, yeah, I mean, there was long days and it was nice. And I have this thing where I read and I write most of the time, and then I occasionally talk to people. So that's kind of how it was. I focus on everything, like my goals and everything. So that's basically what I did when I wasn't on set. So what are the goals? What's happening next? What are we doing?
Um, you Yeah, I know I've heard of that movie. I heard it was really good. I have not seen it yet. I just got a most serious man or a serious man or with Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think it's actually one of his last movies that he did. Yeah, I enjoyed his work very much. Let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question because peer to peer, you and him. How do you feel as an actor? As a human, it's one way, but as an actor, how do you feel like when you see a talent like Philip Seymour Hoffman, who seemed to have everything in the palm of his hand? How do you feel as an actor when you see somebody like that pass on, not necessarily through their own hand? As a human being, is it mixed feelings? Like, as a human, you sit there and go like, that sucks for his wife and his kids. I absolutely hate that. I'm so sad. And is there part as a performer, as an actor, as someone who worked really hard to get where they're at? Is there sort of like anger at the same time, looking at going like, man, you had everything in your hand and you tossed it. Why would you do something like that? Have you ever found yourself just looking at seeing a situation like that and playing it in your head? Do you think actors in general do that with someone who has had big success and has been sort of careless with it?
I don't, but I can name people that do in conversations when that, like when that happened, and when the other instances of actors that have passed away have happened with stuff. One of the things that I learned, I can't remember who told it to me, um, but it was a really, really good, it was great advice. And it's was the building blocks for not crushing yourself down as an actor is you're always consistently like building up. So you're working, whatever your goal is like breaking into like student films, and then you want to work into paying roles, and then maybe if you want to go into feature films or television, then it's co-star, guest star. You're building up the block. Well, the more you move up the food chain, the more you have these other elements that attach. So when you're at one level, you might be worried about like, oh, I just need to get this to break into my first little small television role, and like and pay rent and then do this. Like I have these three problems or whatever. Well, the person who's 5 steps above you has, 10 other problems to make sure they stay at their level, whatever it is. And and then they're trying to do that, and then if and how they're able to maintain that. And I think like when it comes down to drugs and alcohol and abuse, that's where, like for me, I'm a very spiritual person, and that was one of the things. And even in film school, I watched a lot of colleagues fall off the wagon.
Hmm.
And we had this thing in film school. It was really great. It was really great for as an actor. It's called the hot seat. And basically what you do is you sit in front and you get like ripped apart. Basically what happens. And it can be 15 minutes or it could be like 3 hours. And
Wow.
it's basically a teacher finding down the core thing in you that will break you so that those pieces you rebuild. Um, because as an actor, you're supposed to be able to take the makeup off and start as a blank slate to build a character, right?
Right.
And so everybody in film school, their big thing was the hot seat. You're terrified of the hot seat because I have watched people break them down, and their biggest fear that they is going to happen one day. Like it could be something so small. I mean, it's not small, but something like a parent passing away will wreck their life. That's what their moment is. It murders them. Like the next 24 hours, it like, and then they might not let go of that. And
Mhm.
and was really interesting watching everybody do it. And so I was one of the last ones in mine because I'm kind of hard to crack, and teacher had to figure out where you can pick at me. And when he finally did, it wasn't that it like murdered. Like I don't think he even got at me as hard as he wanted. He just knew how to like get to me. And one of the things that I did that was very different from my colleagues is I went and picked up the pieces. So that was one of the things they didn't do is how do you pick up these pieces and like put yourself together? Like what do you do when you're broken? And I because during
It all depends what you it all depends what it is that's breaking you. I mean,
exactly
there are some things that can't heal, won't heal. It's just
exactly.
that's
And I never like even in college and stuff like that, like I would drink, but I taught myself like if I'm stressed, I don't drink. If I'm going through something, I don't drink.
right.
And
Smart.
so it was one of those things where I started watching our class like there are people drinking a lot more and showing up to class drunk than there are people not showing up to class because they don't know what to do. Like they're kind of, maybe they weren't ready for that moment, or because it's a lot, and that's, a lot on a person. And so one of the things that I was going through at the time, I was going through this really bad health thing at the time. And so while I was going through that, is I was also getting spiritual help. And so I brought my acting into that too and was like, hey, this is what's going on. Is this probably part of my issue with stuff? And so what ended up happening is like this whole like health issue I had completely disappeared, but any issue I had also disappeared throughout this like time frame. And so when I went back and like talked to like, my teacher about it, because I was like trying to figure out like, you know, but I'm doing good 3 months before. Like you started seeing me more focused, you started seeing all this stuff happen, but I couldn't figure out why my colleagues are all like having, they're struggling. And he's like, we all handle it differently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the things where like Heath Ledger, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and you have all that where that's the internal where you it's what you do with it, and like maybe not having the right outlet of where you could go for it. like like I said, I don't utilize alcohol like that, and I don't do drugs, so for me I have to do something else. And I think maybe that's, you know I utilize that on just like working harder with acting. And then now what I do is I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go like train a Mustang. Like, why not? Or something like, focus on that because it's, more grounding for me. Um, I learned that there were a few people I randomly met in my life who had nothing to do with acting, but all mentioned the same thing when it came down to something very similar, where they're like, hey, just advice for acting, take take the mask off. As soon as you're off a set, drop it and forget about it, especially if it's dark. So if you ever play a dark character, drop it. Like whatever you do, drop it. Don't stick. Don't do what the other actors do. And so that's one of the things that I've always stuck with. I mean, I
I've
haven't
always
played
been
a dark character lately, but when I have, I try to drop it because there have been times like I played a murderer in 2013 in a short film, and that night I went out with friends and I was physically shaking still because they had me smoking cigarettes on set. And then I like don't drink beer or anything. And one of my friends was like, "You're going to drink this because you need to just." He was like, "It's not about getting drunk. It's about you need to just settle and change your mindset." And he goes, "Because you're not leaving the work on set. Like, you know, film's done. You're already shot. You're wrapped out. Like, you're done. Because you end up taking it with you. We take a lot of this stuff with us in our real life, and then we have to remember when we are with it acting, we keep it on too, and we need to like drop it."
if you just want to, you're right. I mean, you really want to just be able to, when it says cut, you just really want to go from the character you're playing back to Carrie. But I guess it's just, I guess you have to learn how to cope with that. I mean, you have to learn how to let it go. I mean, it's, I think the ones that hang on to it, like a Jared Leto or what have you, that, or Ben Foster, that just absolutely embrace it. You just wonder, like, why can't you let that go? Why can't you just relax? And you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself, to drop that character, because that's not who you are. You're not him.
Yeah.
Well, you are in the movie, but you're not him now. Like, walk around the set. I'm Joe Smith. I'm going to be Joe Smith until they say cut. I'm sorry, I'm not going to address you as Joe Smith when you're not shooting. I'm going to
Yeah.
address you as Ben or as Carrie, because
Yeah.
that's who you are right now.
I mean,
And
like, for me, I'll take a moment if it's really serious. I won't joke around. Because I'll always talk before the scene and like joke around and do silly stuff before and after. If it's really serious, I won't because I'm focusing. But the second that it's like final shot done, like I'm done. Like usually at that point, I'm like, all right, like let's stick around and run around because I want that energy off so much because that's not me. You know, that might be the character and what that character is going through, but you know, mm-mm.
I think a director has an obligation to protect the actor from himself, herself too. I do. I feel like a director. I remember reading about this and how disappointing I was hearing it. But I remember when they did. I want to say it was Gone Girl, and David Fincher directed that movie, and it had Ben Affleck in it. And Ben Affleck, everybody knows that he's been an alcoholic. At that time where he made the movie, he had like 4 or 5 years of sobriety underneath his belt, and so he was, they're setting up some intense scenes, and Ben Affleck decided that in order to get to that character, who that character was, he was going to have to drink. And to me, I always felt like David Fincher's obligation and responsibility was to walk up there and say, if you feel like you need to drink and you drink on this set, you won't have to worry about drinking on again because you won't be here. I'm
Yeah,
not going to have you throw away that for a damn movie. I'm not going to have you throw away I'm not going to have you throw away that. But he said nothing. And
yeah,
Ben Affleck did the scenes, and it wasn't soon after that he relapsed, a full on relapse.
that's
And
very method. I don't do method, but that's very method technique. Um, there's different. There's like five main areas of acting that you kind of study. I mean, now I like mixing them up, but depending on which one you're under, that's one of them where the idea is like go out and if your character is an alcoholic, go out and experience being an alcoholic, and that's
yeah, he already
not
had.
yeah.
It's like there's just
Well,
certain things that there's just certain things you just don't do. Like you already lived this. You know what it was like. You just bring up your memory. You don't need.
and that's where the conversations get kind of really heavy when it comes down to acting and acting techniques because they're like it's called acting. Like
Yeah,
if you're playing if you're playing a drug addict, you do not need to do the drugs. But what you need to do is think about the character and think about something that you can relate to that maybe is similar to an addiction that you might have, like sugar. Like if you
sure,
love lattes, you can use that as a substitution, but
sure.
nothing that would actually physically harm you, and you shouldn't. I mean, it might be able to trick your mind for the moment for your body to change for that scene, but it should be something that as soon as you're done, you should be able to like hopefully get it out,
Exactly.
and stuff like that.
Exactly.
That's always been one of the things that I always have talked about with acting, where I call it like acting is also my therapy because I sometimes get cast as actors or as characters that they're dealing with something similar that I either need to go through or that I am going through in some way sometimes. And so then as this character is going on this journey, it's like, oh, where is this moment and why do I not like this with this character? Oh, it's because I'm doing the same thing in my life or I have just done it. I need to learn. And so it becomes very therapeutic more for me. Like I view it more like that. Like, oh, we're going to go through this together. Except sometimes that character takes a turn. And you're like, we're not going that way in real life. Like, better
Right.
ways. But now with method, that's a very different. Um, I know people who do a little bit more stuff like that. To me, that's not how I was trained. It's not how I do things. There's moments on set where it's like, oh, I feel comfortable doing this and I don't need a stunt person, but it wouldn't be like I'm going to chug something or something like no, I'm fine. I can manipulate it. And, there are ways to do that. You can be stone cold sober and convince people you're drunk,
Sure. Sure.
and do things
That's
like that.
yeah. And to me, that's what I mean. It's like to me, that's what directors, especially when you're dealing with someone like that. Like you have that person on set, and you know their history, and he walks up to you and says, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to throw that all away. I'm going to throw it all away to to for this scene, for this role. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drink." And it's just like, not here, not today, not on my set. I mean, my responsibility is to get you whole and wholesome until the next project.
Yeah.
You get my movie in on time, under budget, and make sure that you are safe. I mean, we're talking about the props and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, you're not gonna you wouldn't let anybody go like, yeah, I got a real bullet in this gun, but I'm gonna play Russian roulette with it and just to see how it goes. Nobody would do that. Nobody would let you do that. And no director should ever let you go and go far beyond what you're supposed to, what your limit is. That's part of it, part of what
Yeah.
we call, yeah. So, I, uh, what do you got going on for the for I know Taken from Rio Bravo. He said it's going to be coming out. I know it's coming out of ITN, and I know it's coming out. This you think this summer or spring?
Summer. I was told July. End of July
Okay.
is the plan.
So, and you're already currently working on a film, wrapping up on a film right now, right? A few more scenes.
Pre-production. I'm in pre-production
Oh,
for a film.
pre-production. Okay.
I think
So now
I
that would be the Mendocino, right?
that one. No, that one. I don't know where it's at. I was just a wrangler on it. There's two I wrangled for. I have no idea in where their world is. I will at some point get an email when that comes out. One, I think they're going to be finishing up soon. There's another one where they're still finding funding, so that one might be a little while. I have a short film called Pandemic Girl that is finishing up in post right now. That will hopefully be coming out soon in festivals. So we'll get that out and going. I'm in pre-production for a new Western film. We'll be shooting hopefully in 2 months, 3 months, I think is the plan.
Okay.
And then there's two horror films coming up after that. And then got another Western, hopefully by the end of the year, maybe beginning
Well,
of
you're
the
going to
year
be
next.
pretty busy this year.
I hope so. Making up for last year.
Oh, yes, yes. Um, I want to thank you for coming out and hanging out with us today, Carrie. I absolutely enjoyed this so much. I've been looking forward to this ever since I asked you to come on out. I was like, yeah, this is going to be really cool, and it turned out to be exactly what I thought it would be. Very, very fun to talk to, and I really do appreciate your time. Um, when we get when Taken comes out and hits the ground. We'll definitely have you and Joe come back with Sean and whoever else we could grab. See if we can grab Alexander this time, and we'll do another watch party of Taken from Rio Bravo.
Absolutely.
And yeah, yeah,
That was
that was.
fun.
You know what? We'll put Joe on the spot right here. He's not even, but I'll put Joe. So we'll try to get Joe to grab Cynthia Rothrock and bring her on here and hang out with us for that. Uh,
Thank you.
that would definitely be fun. Um, but or again, Alexander. I mean, I really like both. I really like Joe and Alexander. I think they're two of the most dynamic creators I've met in years, and I really do. And I love what they're doing with the Western. I love the fact they cast really good actors in it. Uh, talented actors such as yourself who really appreciate what you're doing. You respect the material. The work it's just a rock solid film. It's a great film. I can't wait for the next one and the next one, and have you come back and hang out with us some more.
Oh, it was great. Thank you so much for having me. So much fun.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn over to the chat and say thank you guys all for coming in. Hi, hey Casey, how are you? How are you? Glad you're here. You, Amanda. All right. We will be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. We'll be talking with Greta Volkova. We'll be here with tomorrow night, and we'll be talking all things Sharkenstein, Bigfoot versus zombies. Those are real movies.
Oh,
And yeah, can't wait for it. She's such a nice lady too. She really is a real sweetheart, very talented, and we'll probably be talking about cats tomorrow as well. Thank you so much, Steve. Right where you are for 1 second, Kerry, and to chat. Thank you again. Thank you, Jim, for showing up. I appreciate it so much. And we will talk to you. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow night. Be safe and have a great night. Peace.